Welcome back to our blind beer tasting tournament. We have now finished the qualifiers. As you can see, all our competitors have been assembled for a mid-competition review. We have had 16 rounds with 16 winners and 21 losers, some worse than others. I'll break down some stats and points or trends in this update, hopefully to better understand what makes a beer good or not. Let's clear this up and analyse the losers first. We knocked out all 5 0 beers. An interesting mix. An Italian, a Mexican, a Victorian, South Australian, and another Victorian disguised as a Queenslander. The Great Northern, although it's brewed in Queensland, owned by CUB, so it's sort of a Victorian beer. None of these beers were bad. They went up against better beers, and you could drink these if you wanted to drive afterwards. Next in our losers bracket came the Hammer and Tongs from Vietnam, the Jamesburg Premium Light from Tasmania, and the Hahn Premium Light from New South Wales. The Hammer and Tongs was a 0.9 standard drink. The Jamesburg and the Hahn were both 0.7 standard drinks. Our next bunch of losers are a mixed bag of mid-strength beers. We have the Peroni from Italy, 1.2 standard drinks. Cooper's Dry, a South Australian beer, 1.2 standard drinks. Hahn Super Crisp, a New South Wales beer from 1.1 standard drinks. Smithy's Dry Lager, 1.1 standard drinks, brewed in Australia in multiple locations it says. 4X Gold Dry, it's a Queensland beer, 1.1 standard drinks. Smithy's Premium, another brewed in Australia in multiple location, 1.2 standard drinks. And the Red Bitter Can, 1.2 standard drinks, is a TUI subsidiary beer from New South Wales most likely. Finally, our last set of losers, the heavy beers, and probably the most controversial I'd say for Victorians, and unfortunately there are a lot of Victorians in this. The Carlton Dry, 1.3 standard drinks. The Carlton Draft, which probably the most people will hate me for losing, for making that one lose, 1.4 standard drinks. And the Melbourne Bitter, 1.4 standard drinks. They're all the Victorian beers. And the lone Tasmania in our loser bracket, James Bogue Premium, 1.4 standard drinks. Of all the beers so far, the James Bogue one is the one that I was most surprised that it lost against whoever it came up against. I forget exactly. But it's a beer that I would consider reasonably well enjoyable for myself. On to our winners now. And we're going to start with the mid-strength beers. We have a Hahn Super Dry, 1.2 standard drinks from New South Wales. An Ice from the TUI subsidiary, so New South Wales beer essentially, 1.2 standard drinks. Great Northern Original from Queensland, 1.2 standard drinks. And the San Juan from Portugal, 1.2 standard drinks. Next up for the winners are the light beers. The Great Northern Original, 0.9 standard drinks from Queensland. The Iron Jack, 0.9 standard drinks. It's a Queensland beer. It says brewed in Australia, but it's from Castlemaine Brewery, so it's a Queensland beer. Smithy's Australia, 0.9 standard drinks. The 4X Gold from Queensland, 1 standard drink. Asahi Sukai from Japan, 0.9 standard drinks. And the Cascade Premium Light from Tasmania, 0.7 standard drinks. Queenslanders, they must like their beers a bit weaker because a lot of them dominated the light category. Our final category of beers today are the winners in the heavy division, the best of the best. We have the Crown Lager, a Victorian 1.4, a Japanese Asahi 1.3 standard drinks, the Victorian Champion, the VB, 1.4 standard drinks, Furphy Original, Victorian from Geelong, 1.3 standard drinks. Whoops, there goes the creaky door. The Furphy Crisp from Geelong, Victoria, 1.3. and our international competitor, the Corona from Mexico, 1.3 standard drinks. So now that we've been through all the winners, I can make some statements about what the beer says. And it's not perfect because a light beer, like a really good light beer, may have gone up against a really bad heavy beer. And the other way around, like a really good heavy beer may have gone up against a zero beer, or two mids may have knocked each other out. So it's not a perfect assessment because that's not what we're doing. It's just which one tastes good compared to a different beer. But what we can see is a bit of a trend. We can definitely conclude that South Australia makes the worst beer so far. They had 2 losers and 0 winners. We can also see that international beers probably only get into Australia if they're already good. We had 4 international beers win and 3 losers, so a positive ratio. Queenslanders, we can see, make the best beer. They've got 4 winners and only 2 losers. One of them was one of those losers was a 0 beer, so it probably wasn't going to really win. So you could almost call it a 4-to-1 ratio. New South Wales cut even basically. It was a 2-3, so pretty close. And Victoria went 4-5, 4 winners, 5 losers. So you basically call that even. You know, a Victorian may have knocked out a Victorian sort of thing. So Vic, New South Wales, Tassie, and international beers all pretty even. The Queensland beer is clearly the best so far. The South Australian beer is clearly the worst. And there was a couple of beers that just said brewed in Australia, and you can't really put them, they don't tell you where they're brewed, they just say multiple locations, so to put them to a state's a bit unfair. The last way we can categorise it is the way beers brand themselves. Dry and super crisp are basically the same thing in a sense. There were 6 losers in the dry super category, and there was only 3 winners. So it's safe to say dries or super crisps aren't my favourite beer. Bitters is another category that they promote. There was 1 winner and 2 losers, so not a very broad range, but you can see there's a trend that bitters aren't as nice. And a strange category I found, beers that promote themselves as premium beers had 4 losses, and I'm pretty sure they didn't have a single win. No, they had 1. Only 1 win in the premium category. The rest are just marketed as average, originals, lagers, nothing special. But yeah, anything that's called premium probably isn't worth the money you pay for it. I hope this little midway breakdown helped you remember the beers that I've tried so far. It wasn't a perfect analysis. Some really good beers may have been put up against really good beers, and some losers may have snuck through to the next round because they were up against losers. Let me know if I put one of your favourite beers in the loser column, or if you reckon one of the winner beers shouldn't be there. Next episode, we'll be starting the round of 16, where all the winners will start to face off against the winners. The beers, like normal, will be randomly chosen, and they'll be out of sight, but we'll set it up so that the viewers can see what I'm tasting before the reveal. I'll see you then.